Just going to wait a couple of minutes, a couple of moments actually, until we get everyone going. Just a few seconds. All right, well, let's get this started. Welcome to another episode of Houdini Secrets Live. It means that it is Friday, it is 3 o'clock, and we are ready to rock and roll. My name is Chris Rhoda, and I will be your host for today's episode. Now, I'm really excited about this particular episode because this is kind of the culmination of the last few weeks of information that we've been working on. Now, if you've been with us for the last couple weeks, we realized that 2 weeks ago we dealt with the Houdini Procedural Building creator, which is really cool, but it ends up creating the object within the context of Houdini. Of then you got to you got to go and then move things over to UE4. That's when or to the game engine, and that's when I realized that that is really great. But a lot of times people bring in stuff from asset packs from other engines and they bring it into Houdini, and then it's got to get converted. And so the week after that, I kind of dealt with the situation of, well, how do we export the assets that we create in Houdini back out to UE or to the game engine? And that ended up with a bunch of different techniques. And one of the techniques that was presented during the first week was something called a point instancing. And there you use the actual Houdini point instancing technique in order to use the actual asset that's in the context of the engine. And therefore, you can use Houdini Engine within the context of your real-time situation in order to figure out what it is that you need, and actually you can design your building in real time. And so last week I presented a couple different ways of bringing in assets from Houdini to your game engine using using the point technique. Now there are two point techniques that we can use. One is the instance, using the instance operator inside of the object level, and the other is using the copy to points in the SOP level, and then using a pack and instance parameter within that SOP. And I contacted Side Effects about this, and they said that the instance node in the object layer is more for, what do they call it? Legacy reasons. Yes, legacy, that's what they called it. And they had in order to keep up with old things, they had to keep the instance node around. However, for what I was trying to do, they actually said that they preferred you using the point and instance node within the copy to point SOP. So therefore, I came up with a workflow on how to use engine assets within the context of Houdini, creating a digital asset, and then creating a digital asset that we can put back into the engine, and then use the actual use the asset pack assets themselves and build dynamic buildings. Okay, so this is just one particular workflow. Now, this is one workflow that I did get to work, and it does work correctly, and I'm kind of happy with it because it kind of works, and I'm going to be using this in other projects, so I'm kind of happy about it. Ha, 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 ha. And here I am to share this with you. All right, now we are going to use the point, copy to point SOP inside of the SOP level, and then using the pack and instance method in order to create a variable switch around within the context of the engine of where we can actually start using the game assets. And there's a bunch of other considerations that we need to do this. Now, in order to demonstrate how we go through this, I'm going to be going slowly and I'm going deliberately. I personally have, well, let's just say I don't have a lot of good luck with Houdini Engine. I need to go step by step using Houdini Engine and check things in context of the game engine to make sure that what's going on in Houdini translates correctly over into what's engine. I know it's supposed to work, but then me, bear of little brains, may not actually be doing it correctly. So therefore, I need to know when I'm not doing things correctly. And so therefore, I tend to go rather slow. And I will be demonstrating that slow, methodical, one piece at a time technique. And we are not going to be modeling any assets. We are only going to be using assets which are found in asset packs from the game engine. That's all we're going to use. I'm going to show you techniques on how to bring those or variations of those assets into Houdini. They don't look exactly the same, but they are a place to start. And as I mentioned before, we are going to be using the copy to points SOP within the object or within the SOP level, and that causes a different kind of workflow, and that creates multiple objects to be created on the object level. And it's a little hard to describe, but I will describe it all in detail in due course. So welcome to this session, and let's get started. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my screen here. All right, we've got Houdini set up here. Now, let's start off by creating a brand new project. Now, you can go into the projects, dial in your project name. Here, I know my project is going to be on the E drive, and take our EDU, Houdini Secrets, whoops. Take our EDU, Secrets. We're calling this the proc buildings object. So I have already created this project. So go ahead and create your project. And let me go ahead and I'm going to set my project because I want it to be the same. All right, where is it? Well, it's hiding from me now. So watch what this is going to go and mess things up. So I'm going to go set my project by hand. I'll go proc buildings. That's what I want. Okay, that's my project. All right, we've got our new project set. And the reason why we set the project is because we're going to go into Game Engine, and then we're going to export assets from the Game Engine so that Houdini can use them as reference when it's building its digital asset, right? Okay, so I'm going to return to Engine here. And here I have an asset pack loaded up from UE4, and this is something called the Modular City. And it's a pretty cool set of assets. It's got some good data. It's got some interesting looking buildings. And the building that I'm particularly interested is this little building here. And it looks pretty simple, and it'll look like pretty good. Now, I'm not going to be demonstrating how to build this digital asset in order to create variations of this building, of this particular building. Now, could we do it? Yes, we could, but needless to say, we don't have the time within this broadcast to actually dedicate to it. We're going to spend maybe about 2 hours putting this together, but maybe that in order to create something like this might take maybe 3 to 4 hours to actually put together. However, I'm going to show you the pipeline and the workflow, how to set this up. So not only can you set this up on your own, but you could set up any of these other buildings if you wanted to choose, if you wanted to create variations of them. So in my humble opinion, the workflow and the process is very, very valuable because, oh, it's kind of like, do you give a man a fish or do you teach a man a fish and then he eats for life, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to be going on. So I'm going to look at this particular building and I'm going to look at some of the assets that are involved with. And so if I was going to duplicate this facade of this building, I would first need this first piece. If you can, it's a little hard to see, but if you move this first piece around, it's kind of like here's the bottom of the foundation. And the name of this piece is called Upper Brick Window AR 3x2. Now that's kind of important to recognize here because upper brick window AR32, there are no eyes in the window. I do not know why. But needless to say, let's move on. So I'm going to write that down and say, okay, I want this object. Then I'm going to check it out. What's this object? And this is also upper brick window AR32, but it's using some different textures. It's using some different materials. I'm going to go on this one. And it also is upper brick window 3x2. And so actually, if we look on here, they're all upper brick window 3x2. So that is definitely an asset that I want. Okay, now this has a little front piece in front of it. And if we wanted to use this, what's this called? This is called upper brick column 1x2. I'm going to mark that one down. And this has got some kind of footings, like on the corner. And this is called beam pillar metal one top. And it's got some beams coming off the side here. And these are called beam pillar metal 1x2 tiling. And yeah, these are all pretty good. So we don't really need a whole bunch. And the last one we're going to need is like way up on top. If you notice that here's the roof and it says plain ground 4x4. Okay, that's cool. I can use plain ground 4x4. So that is the asset that I'm going to use in conjunction with. So what we can do now is I'm going to go into the actual database here and I'm going to export these objects to Houdini, and I'm going to export them to my Geo folder so I know where they are. So let's go ahead and find them. Okay, we know who our key assets are. And so for every one of our key assets, we're going to export to Houdini. So I'm going to go into meshes, and I know the meshes that I want is upper brick windows. So I'm going to double click upper brick windows and I know that I want upper brick window AR 3x2. Upper brick window AR 3x2. I'm going to right click on this and then I'm going to go over here to asset actions and then I'm going to export. Now I'm going to navigate then to my digital asset or my project where my digital asset is kept. And then I'm going to navigate to my Geo folder. Then I'm just going to park it right there into this. Oh yeah, I created a game folder. Okay, which is fine. But I didn't even need that. I'm just kind of that's just leftover residuals. But I just selected my Geo folder. I said go ahead and hit save, and then it's going to export. But then it's going to ask what type of FBX that we want. Now this is kind of important here because in the options here, you don't want the collisions to be turned on. You want to turn the collisions off. What that does is that it's not something that we necessarily need for what we're going to be using in Houdini. We're going to use this object kind of like as a reference hull. We're going to use it within the context of Houdini, and we don't need the object mesh, and so that's just one less step to take care of. So when you're finished, go ahead and hit export, and then you will have the piece in there. Now, for demonstration purpose, the only other piece I'm going to need here is I'm going to go to the walls grounds and I'm going to need the plain ground 3x3. Now that was the tile that was on top, and so that's going to be the one that I'm going to use. I'm going to right click this, asset actions, migrate. Oh, I don't want to migrate. No, I want to export. Now, migrating's good for moving assets between projects. Okay, I've got this one engine project and I'll move it over to another project. That's when we use migrate. Export, on the other hand, actually exports as an FBX. And I'm going to use the exact same Geo folder that we had set before. Okay, so that's actually set. So we should now have those two objects sitting within our project inside of Houdini. All right, so let's go back to Houdini and get things started and rocking and rolling. Okay, so let's start things off by, let's see, what's the next step? Okay, looks like I forgot. All right, so let's go ahead and create go to Utility, go to Subnetworks, and in the subnetwork, go ahead and drop down, let's just call this proc building, because this is my procedural building. All right, so I'm going to immediately turn this into a digital asset. So I am working within the context of a digital asset. So I'm going to right click in there and I'm going to say create digital asset. And I'm just going to call this proc building. And I'm going to set my folder to be $job/HDA/proc building HDA. All right, click accept. And we are good. Okay, we're not going to be doing anything fancy with the digital asset for now. We're just going to keep things nice and super simple. But we're going to use this, so go ahead and hit accept. All right, now drop in to the procedural building asset. And now we're sitting at the digital assets object level. Now we're not in the actual geometry level, we're still on the geometry level. So what we're going to do is for every one of our pieces that we exported, we're going to create a local geometric reference. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Drop down a geometry node and call this the first thing we want to work with is the upper brick window AR32. So I'm going to call this asset camp upper. I'm going to try to keep it as close to the naming convention as possible. Upper brick window without the eyes. AR underscore 3x2. Okay, the only reason why I am just naming it as close as I can possible is just to have an actual reference of what we're going to do. So I'm going to drop into this, and now we're in the object or in the SOP level. So let's go ahead and drop down our first node, which is a file node, which is going to import the actual object. So I'm going to click in there. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and pull it right in here. Now, if you're going to create a fancier digital asset, you could make this process a little bit more automated. However, this process should be good to go. So I'm just going to click that and go into my job, go into my geo, go into my game, and I'm going to, okay, UE4 will actually create the paths inside of the assets. And so you had to kind of duplicate the whole path within a file folder structure. So it's meshes, and this was the upper brick windows, and we want upper brick window AR32. Upper brick window AR32. Accept. Okay. Now, if you look here, this is what happened. I forgot to put in the turn off the collision. And this ugly blue schmutz that we see on here, this is the collision volume. So I want to get rid of the collision value. If you forgot to hit the collision, turn off the collision, this is what you got to do. Got to immediately go in here and drop in a blast node. Now, I'm going to set the display on the blast node. It's going to blast the whole thing. But for the group inside the blast node, go ahead and pull in the group that says UCX underscore upper brick window AR. Now, UCX is the game engine's prefix for the collision geometry. So I'm going to click that. And then we see, okay, we see the collision geometry looking really nice here. All right, yep, that's exactly what we want. Okay, so we've got that going. But remember, Houdini's units are in centimeters, and UE4's units are in meters. So if we were to work on this Houdini unit, this asset, and it comes in from 0 to, well, golly, it's like 400 some kind of units big. It's going to be like 400 meters wide. It's going to be gigantic. But we only want it like 4 point something meters wide. So we got to knock it way down. So let's go ahead and transform this and make it smaller by 100 times. So the uniform scale, make that 0.01. And so it's itty bitty. But I'm going to focus in on that. And so now we have, and it looks like it's much smaller. All right. Now we've got that going in here. And what we're going to do is set an output node. Putting an output node is kind of like dotting your I's and crossing your T's. And I'm going to call this upper brick window AR3X2 output. All right. Oh, there's one other thing I forgot to do. Okay. Now, if you remember a couple weeks ago, I told you that UE4, when using Houdini Engine doesn't use file references very well when enacted inside of the digital engine going into the actual engine itself. So what I'm going to do here is where it says File, I'm going to go ahead and hit the snowflake here. This is the lock. And this is going to freeze the asset. In other words, it's going to freeze the data going into Houdini, and it's going to lock it in place, and it's make it part of the digital asset itself. So when it goes into the game engine, it will have an immediate reference to draw from. Okay, so we have our output. Okay, so we have our asset that's just sitting right there. If you want to, you could load this in and load up some textures and materials and then create the materials and the textures. But since we went through that process a couple weeks ago, I'm not going to go through that again. If you want, go check out my the Houdini Secrets Live episode number 17. Yeah, I believe that covers over how to bring in the textures and the assets to get everything looking good. But what we got here is we're in there. So I'm going to turn this object off. And you're going to see why in a minute. I'm going to create another geometry node. And I'm going to call this Proc Building Master. Proc Building Master. This is going to be the geometry in which we do all of our assembling of the actual building inside. This is where it all going to take place. But remember, we are going to have to use the point copy to asset, copy to point technique. So therefore, we're going to have to build our sections in kind of modular ways and to make it easily groupable. And I'll demonstrate what that looks like in a moment here. I'm going to drive into Proc Building Master. And we're going to lay down the first piece. So I'm just going to try to make sure that this guy, this dealio, is working inside of Houdini Engine first. So I'm just going to lay down just one object and make sure that that is working properly and making sure that my pipeline is ideologically sound. So I'm going to lay down give me an object merge. And I'm going to ask for it. So I'm going to go // asset upper brick window to there. Okay. And then I'm going to merge this into this object. All right, then I'm going to call this guy exactly what it is called within the context of the asset pack. So it's called upper brick window A underscore R underscore 3x2. Okay. Now we've got this going, and so we've got our object here. Now this object is for us. This is for us to use as a reference, because really what we're going to do is build our building not out of these shapes. We're going to be building them out of points. And you're going, build them out of points? What in goody go-go was he talking about? Well, I'm going to show you here in a second. So therefore, since we're going to be building this out of points, let's go ahead and create a point. So I'm going to right-click in here and drop down an add SOP. Now this is really old school Houdini. I don't know if anyone really models like this anymore. Should they or shouldn't they? I don't know, but this is kind of like what this old guy here is working at. So click here on the points parameter so that we have 1 point. And then for the polygons, just put 0 in there. So what this does is I'm going to click on the information. Oh, it doesn't show that. Oh, shucks. Okay, well, if I middle mouse click it. Okay, it shows that we have 1 point, one primitive, 1 vertex, and then 1 polygon. That's exactly what we want. Now, because we're going to be using the copy to point, we're going to need to set our normal to a specific angle, because remember, we're going to be using the copy to point. Copy to point is very sensitive to the normal direction of the points that it is going, but there is no normal. If we just double click here, you see there's no normal parameter. That's right. So we got to add a normal parameter. Oh, you know what? My bad. We don't need a normal parameter because I'm lazy. Instead of putting down a normal parameter and actually taking a couple of SOPs, I'm just going to use 1 SOP. Actually, we could just use, 1 SOP. So I'm just going to lay down a point wrangle. You know, ever since really mastering Vex, I have to say that I've gotten lazy, and I just kind of revert to using a point wrangle whenever I can. So since I'm going to be adding a normal and I want the normal to point in the Z direction, I'm just going to take it like this. I say point add or at n equals set 0, 0, -1, semicolon. Okay, what that's going to do is it's going to create a vector on my vertex. And you can say, oh, I don't see anything. Well, it's over there. And if we turn on the normal, oh, wait, that's the wrong thing. Click on the normal, and oh yeah, there it is. All right, come on. Okay, it's really small, but I'll just have to leave it as is for now. But as you can see, it's got a normal on it, and that's what we want, and it's pointed along the Z direction. Do we want it all in the negative Z direction or the positive Z direction? Okay. You know what? I am wrong. We need it to point in the positive Z direction. So I'm going to set that to 0, 0, 1. Hit Control S. No, cancel. We don't want that. But if we look at our geometry viewer, we look at the point number, the parameter, but we see that this point has a normal value of 0, 0, 1. Cool. That's just what we need. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my point down to its first position. Now, if you remember on UE4, inside the game engine, our first piece here is the same primitive, the upper brick window, but it's been lowered a certain amount. And how much? It's been lowered by, well, here's our number. It says minus 209.99985. So what that means is we have to lower our point minus 2.1 units in order to match the same droppage. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to drop in a transform node. Whoops, come on. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to translate it minus 2.1. And it is still really, really dinky and really, really small. Okay, I have to stop doing that. All right. All right. So, okay. So I'm going to, oh, let's, oh, this is kind of backwards, but let's test this out. So let's do a copy to point. So I'm going to drag this down here and lay down a copy to point, and then put the input, the first input for my first object, and then my second is going to be from the point. I'm going to display this, and there is my object. I'll turn off my points. It's now sitting, right at the exact same level as it is in game, and it's just sitting there, right below the level, and it is pretty much right where we want it to be. Oh, the one thing I forgot to do, this is super duper important. Click the pack and instance. Okay, this gets it ready to be imported into UE4, and when it brings into UE4, it brings in the primitive type, and then everywhere that primitive type is used, it's instanced, and therefore it is duplicated. And so this makes the facilitation of the digital asset inside of the Houdini engine, inside of the engine, much smoother and cleaner, and gets to work on time. Okay. Now let's go ahead and lay down a group node. All right, so I want to make sure that I know this group to be by name. And so this group is the actual name of the piece. So I'm going to call it upper brick underscore window A underscore R underscore 3 by 2. Okay, so that is my group. And we have our group taken care of. And now this group is now known as a thing. Okay, and now let's go ahead and put in our ever faithful output node. And so I'm going to call this guy, we're not going to call it upper brick window out, we're going to call it proc building out, because this is the output node for the entire building. Now we only have one piece here, yeah, I know, but this is just for test purposes because we're going to get this going into Engine as quickly and as soon as possible to make sure that our ideas and our philosophies are sound. Okay, I'm going to go upwards and upwards again. There's my asset. I'm going to right click, say save node type. And what did I call this again? Type properties. This is called a proc building. Okay, accept. Now I'm going to return to my game engine. And then I'm going to create a folder, new folder. I'm going to call this HSL Happy, because this is like Houdini Secrets Live, and we're using the Happy engine. If you didn't all know that before, that was what the Houdini engine was called before. Houdini API, other words, the Happy API. That's what it really was originally. If you want an explanation of that, listen to my Tech Art talk from earlier today when we were talking with Ivan DeWolf, and he'll explain exactly why it's called Happy. Anyway, drop into there and then import into there, and I'm going to navigate to my digital asset, and what do I call this? Proc building. No. HSL proc building a 1 o'clock. No. Oh, yeah. No. Building gen. It's proc building. It doesn't seem to be in here. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to go out of Houdini. And then make sure my type properties are set properly. Aha. Proc buildings. Ha. HDA. Typo error. Apply. Okay, now it's set properly. Accept. Ha's the name of my wife, by the way. Hello, Ha, if you're listening. Love you. So I'm going to save that node type. I'll right click into there, import into that, and we're going to go into my HDA folder, and now here it is, proc building HDA, open. Okay, cool. Okay, let's go and test this into a new level. So I'm going to go and add content, and I'm going to create a little folder here to store my own stuff, maps. And let's go ahead and create a new, I'm going to go ahead and file and create a new level and just make it the default level. And for this area, I'm going to take the floor and I'm going to make it, 10 by 10 by 10. All right. Arg. Enough of this. Okay, I'm going to save this current one to my maps folder. So save as maps. Okay, I'm going to call this HSL. Happy demo. Okay, let's call that happy demo. All right, now let's go ahead and drag our digital asset inside of that. So where's my happy folder? HSL happy. Let's drag that in here and see what happens. All right. Now my geometry, oh, there it is. It showed up, and it showed up kind of like the way we wanted it to. But this showed up exactly like the way that we wanted it to in Houdini. And that's because we aren't using the actual asset that's from the asset pack. We're using our kind of modified Frankenstein version. Now, this is one thing that I have discovered. If you pulled in your digital asset and you dropped it in the level and nothing showed up, what you forgot to do was you forgot to freeze your asset when it was in the file SOP. So if nothing pops up, go ahead, go back to your file SOP, freeze that node, and then export and resave, and then hit the rebuild asset button. Okay, now here's the reason of why we are using the point to or using the point instance and the copy to points. If you look under here where it says Houdini generated meshes, or it says proc building, this shows you the actual asset that is generated for the whole thing. Now this is okay, but really what we want, this is okay, but really what we want here is where it says Houdini instance inputs. Open that up, and then we see that we have the same object again, but this one is editable. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this object with my actual asset type. So we called it upper underscore brick underscore WNDW. Oh, there it is. Let's just make it easier on ourselves. AR32. All right. Now we are looking at the asset that our game engine knows and is aware of. And so we are groovy and we are set in time with this. So our process works. Yay! Okay, now that we know that our process works and everything is solid, let's go ahead and start fleshing in, a basic and very simple procedural building. Okay, and so let's go back to Houdini. And so any procedural building, well, if it's going to be simple, I mean, it's basically a box, right? So it's got width, depth, and height. So let's go ahead and uh, go on the width of it. And we're going to be basing the width based on the bounding box width of our source asset. Okay, so we can deal with that. So we're going to be dealing with in units as how many of our base assets that we're going to use. So I'm going to right click onto there and go into type properties. It's for parameters. So I'm just going to go grab a float because it's going to get translated to a float anyway. So I'm going to go grab a float, drag it under root, and then I am just going to call this width. And for the label, we'll call it building width. Okay, click accept. Okay, we've got that working and we have our parameter. Yep, there's our building width. Oh, you know what I like to try to do? I like to put that into a folder, a little tab, so it's kind of like unique on its own. So I'm going to reopen that. And then I'm going to add a folder here. I'm going to call the folder, the title name, I'm going to call it Proc Building. And then I'm going to grab my width and then make it a child of that. Okay, there's a terrible looking C. It's like Croc Building, if anything. Proc Building. Okay, click accept. We're good to go. Okay, now let's go ahead and adjust our thing. Okay. Oh, you know what? I keep on getting ahead of myself. I'm going to right click into this, go into the type properties. You know, we want this to have some kind of uh, behavior. And so since we're going to be working with units of asset pieces themselves, we only want to start with one asset. We want to start with one instance. Now, that's why, you know, we're not going to be using anything less than one because we always want things to start with one. So the range, let's put the range going from 1 to maybe 25. And for the channels here on the defaults, let's set this to 1. So it's at least going to be 1 unit wide. That's what we want. So now we can hit accept, and then we can drop into our unit. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a long wall. Now I'm going to drop into Proc Building Master. All right, so here we are. We've got our basics going here, and this is our main wall. And so what we're going to do is drop a copy and transform SOP between the transform and the copy to points. Okay, so this is going to duplicate our unit, you know, how many units wide. So I'm going to, copy this and drop in a copy copy and transform. And then I'm going to call this, let's see, do we want to put the name? Okay, we'll just call this wall wide for now. I might change that name somewhere down the line. I'm going to scoot that in here. Now the total number of copies, what we're going to do is we're going to go CH, and I'm going to go CH parentheses and then open quotes, go dot dot slash width. Oh, my bad. This is bad. What I'm going to do is, regretfully, I forgot to change my name. I want to keep this in Python because we're going to take advantage of some Python idiosyncrasies. So I'm going to kill this. I'm going to delete my channel. Okay, now we're good. I'm going to change this back to Python. Now I'm going to paste this back. And we are good. And now it's complaining. What is wrong with this? Unable to evaluate. Operation failed. Well, that's not much help. Okay, oh, worth, because I misspelled it. Try width. Oh, okay, there you go. And so you'll see that it says a value of 1 in there now. Okay, so the now we are going to copy it over a bunch of times. Now there's a reason why we're going to use this as Python, is because we're going to put in a long Python expression in here for the TZ. If there's only one element in here, we don't want this translating. However, if we want this to translate a set amount every time, we want it to translate the asset unit's width every single time. So let's go in here. I'm going to put my cursor in there. I'm going to hit Alt-E to open up my little window here. And now we are going to program ourselves some Python. So we're going to say if and ch, and I'm going to parentheses, or I'm sorry, quotes, NCY, close quotes, close parentheses, if ch ncy. Okay, for those of you who don't speak Python, what this means is if, and then it's going to access the channel value ncy. Ncy is another name for what we got here. You see this, it says ncy up there. This is the name that Houdini knows the parameter to be. So it's asking if that number is less than 2. So I'm going to put less than 2. Okay, if that number is less than 2, in other words, if it's 1, go ahead and make sure to hit tab on there. Don't hit space because Python doesn't like spaces, uses tabs. Go return 0. Okay, and now go back and make sure you get those tabs right. So else, okay, return. Okay, now we're going to use a little bit of Python ease in here, and this is for those of you who don't use Houdini Python. I apologize at first for the obtuseness, but once you get this initial expression down, then we're just going to copy and paste this expression from that on in. So we're going to you're going to return this, and we're going to go say negative, and then what we want is the width of this asset. And we're going, okay, well, how do we find the width of this particular asset? Well, remember, we did the object merge. We called that object merge exactly the name that we wanted. So that's a good place to get it. So it is unmolested, unchanged. There's nothing changed with that. So we're going to try to get its bounding box information. And this is the Houdini Python expression for getting that. So I'm going to say who.node. And then in parentheses, or in quotes, I'm going to put in the name of my unit. So it'll be /upper underscore brick underscore window without eyes. Oh, and it says, okay, there it is. It's completing it for me. Thank you. Close parentheses, close quotes, close parentheses. Okay, now in Pythonese, what this means is who.node and upper brick window. So that means I have access, I have a pointer now to that node of that merge node. So I want its geometry, so dot geometry. I have its geometry now, and now I want to get the bounding box of that geometry. So dot bounding box, and I've got that set in there. And this bounding box has a vector in it called the size vector. So I want its size vector, so dot size vec. Now the size vec function returns a vector. And so we want the z component of the vector, and the z vector of the component, of course, is 2. So we're going to leave that in there. So I'm going to hit apply to see if that works, and no complaints. All right, so I'm going to click accept, and so this calls it wall wide, and I'm going to just change the name of this to width, because this is the thing that really sets how wide our building is. So we've got everything set up here. I'm going to go up a level, and click on Proc Building. I'm going to go over to my tab here, and now the building width. Now, if all goes right, we extend this, and we should get multiple copies, and we do not. We get nothing. Okay, we've got problems. Okay, width. Okay, what is wrong? Okay, unable to evaluate expression. Okay, well, that's good. So we know we have a typo in here someplace, so that's fine. So is it this one? No, 7 is right, so let's take a look at this. Oh, good, good. It's got errors in there. All right, so what is wrong with this? Okay, size vec. Okay, bung box. Yes. The imagination just spins out of control directly into the pavement here. Instead of bung box, should be bounding box. Bounding box, yes. Apply, Yes, that works. Fun with Houdini. But if we click on here, we see that it is now 7 units wide. And we're going to make it smaller to larger. Okay, this looks really good. So let's go ahead, save this node asset. Now let's go back to UE4 and actually give it a try. All right, so all we have to do now is click the rebuild asset. And it's going to think, and it's going to hum, it's going to whirl. Okay, well, it didn't actually process this, so I might have to go and manhandle it because well, proc building. Oh, okay. Well, the number of building. Let's pull this over. 5. Oh, there it is. There's our width. Okay, so we have 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 3, 4. Okay, well, we've got 4 units here. We got 4 units wide. Okay, so we have our building width established. Okay, we're making progress. Okay, let's go back to Houdini and let's add some depth. Going to go back into proc building, go ahead and drop it in our proc building master. Okay, we have the width. Now, creating the depth is probably our most difficult portion here, because what we have to do then is we have to create a right wall, a left wall, and then a back wall. And all of those have to correspond to the depth. So the width wall was pretty easy, but now we have to go in and kind of create the right wall. So let's drop a, okay, so let's go back to our digital asset and right click and type properties. And since we're at it, let's just drop 2 floats in here. We're going to drop in there and we're going to call this one depth. And make this building depth as a label name. And then this also is going to have a range of 1 to 25. And the minimum value is going to be value of 1. All right, let's go ahead and duplicate that one again. Nope. So Control C and then Control V. Oh, come on. Work with me here. All right, so this adds it as depth 2. So let's make this height. Building height. All right, and we know that it has a value of 1 to 25 and the default value of 1. Click Accept. All right, excellent, very good. So now we have our stuff. So let's go and start off with creating the left wall. Okay, this is actually also an introduction into very simplistic, I emphasize simple procedural modeling. Very simple. So I'm going to, for the, okay. All right, so I'm going to move this off. And here's my transform node here. And I'm going to call this, well, because it moves it under the ground, minus 2.1, I'm going to call it underground. So I don't forget what it is. Okay, so from this underground node, I'm going to create a variation of this point here. And I'm going to drop in another transform node. So transform. And I'm going to call this left wall. Okay, so we have this left wall node here. And so what we're going to do, the TX value actually equals the amount here that we have to move it over the full amount. So let's go ahead. I'm going to look at this expression here, and I want this entire long wicked expression here. See? I'm going to hit close. I'm going to come over here to I'm going to change this over to Python. And then I'm going to move it in the X direction because we have, this is the Z direction, so we're going to move this in the X direction, which is now our depth. And I'm going to hit Control V. I'm going to hit Enter. And we don't have an instance on here, but what we're going to do is we have the width here, and now we have we're going to create another copy to points here from here over, oops, into there. So create yet another copy to points. Copy to points. Yep. Well, actually, no. We want a copy and okay. Let me hold on a second. I'm confused here. So if we copy and transform that, so we'll just create a merge node. So we've got a, yeah, they're all pointed there. We've got 4 copies. We've got 4 points sitting right in a row. I don't know if you can see those. Yeah, hopefully you can see those. And we've got this left wall where the object has just been, the point has just been moved over just a little bit. So let's all combine them. So I'm going to go and throw in a merge node. So that the points are all together, and so now we should have 5 points on there. And now let's move this 5 points to this copy to points. Now if we display this, there we go. Okay, now the problem is that this object is now not rotated properly. So let's go ahead and fix this left wall's rotation. So I'm going to go and click in here, and for the rotation there, I believe the Y rotation is -90. Okay, there we go. That fixed that. Okay, now this is good. Now what we have to do is make the depth on this. So what I'm going to do is between left wall and merge, I'm going to create a copy and transform SOP in order to do the depth. And so I'm going to click this. I'll say copy and transform. I'm going to drop that in here. I'm going to name this guy just depth. All right. So for the total number, I'm going to turn this over to Python. And I'm going to go ch. And in parentheses and in quotes, I'm going to go dot dot slash depth, because that will hold our depth amount. And does that register 1? Yes, it does. So we typed it in correctly. And now what we're going to do is we are going to translate x a certain amount. And we're going to use almost the exact same expression that we used in this. So I'm going to go in and copy this, this expression here. And then I'm going to drop into here to this depth, but instead of the Z direction, which is this, we're going to go in the X direction, which is now back and forth here. So I'm going to drop that in here. I'm going to click Control V, and I'm going to go ahead and just look at this. Oh, okay, here, fine. There it is. All right, now if the number of copies is less than 2, we're going to return 0. And if the and then if it's greater than 1, then what we're going to do is we're going to move the unit, the width of our asset every time. So that looks fine. So click Apply, Accept. All right, cool. So we've got the depth going into here. All right. All right. So we've got musical effects adjoining the Houdini session live. You never know what you're going to encounter when you hit this, so please enjoy the background music. Okay, so let's see. Oh, we've got this working. So let's go ahead and give ourselves some depth here. Okay, so building depth. All right, so it looks like we've got a building that is now 4 units deep. All right, sweet. So that works. Okay, so we have our left wall. So what we have to do now is add a right wall. You can start to see a pattern developing here, right? Okay, so drop another transform now into here. Call this transform. All right, this is right wall. And then let's see. Oh, we're going to have to label this. The right Y, we're going to have to rotate this 90 degrees. And then what we're going to have to do is we're going to, okay, we're going to give a big expression here for the TZ. So what we have to do is, however wide this is, we're going to need to translate this first right wall, however wide this is. And how wide is this? It's the number of copies for the width times the width of the actual asset itself. So let's go into here. Oh, I want to cancel. Make sure that this is a Python SOP. Okay, hit Alt-E. Okay, so first I want is the number of copies that we are copying in the width. So CH, and we created a SOP called width. So inside of the quotes, it's ... / width, and we want the NCY channel. So NCY. Okay. So it keeps popping up and wanting to complete this. So this will give us the number of copies that we have going in our width. And we're going to multiply that number by the bounding box size of our geometry from the left side or from the Z direction. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that expression from my other places. And so it's who node, okay, times who node, okay, geometry, bounding box, size vec2. Okay, and we rotated it at 90, so let me apply. That seems to have worked. I click accept. All right, so if I was to throw this into the merge here, okay, so do we have a, okay, well, we still don't have that right wall. It's still hiding. It's being bashful. Okay, where are you, right wall? Hello? Are you here? Where are you, right wall? It should be at almost the exact same place as the left wall. So where is my left wall? It's at 0, 0, 0. All right, and so where's my right wall? Oh, it's still at 0, 0, 0. Okay. And so the center is at 18. So, okay, so... oh, look at that. It's way over in the negative area. It's negative 19. No wonder I didn't see it. Okay, that's easy enough to find. So it should be negative 18. So let's go ahead and modify that expression. So I'm just going to put a negative. It's popped into right there. And so if we take a look at this, look at our output, we have our right wall here. Yay! Okay, so that works. Okay, so now all we have to do is, since we've got the right wall, was we have to create another kind of a duplicate of of the uh, of the right wall, kind of like what we created here for this depth. And so let's go ahead and make a duplicate, or I'm going to hit Alt and then drag, and then snake that in there. And yep, it's an exact duplicate of that. So we've got that working properly. Okay, so I'm going to call this depth for right wall, though. That was just too easy. I can't believe how easy that was. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite us in the butt. That was just too easy, gang. So we've got our right wall and our left wall, so we got to create our back wall. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to, since we've got this width node here, we're going to append a transform node for the entire width. So what we're going to do is we are going to take this entire wall that we've got here, and we're going to rotate it 180 degrees and kind of move it around. So let's see if this actually works here. So we've got this width here, so we're going to create a transform. And then we're going to call this one back wall. Back wall. Okay, now this is going to get a little bit tricky, but let's try to go do this. So so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to move the X direction. We're going to have to move the depth, and in the Z direction, we're going to have to move the Y. So let's see what happens here. We've got that working in there. So let's go ahead and plug that in there so we can see what's going on here. So let's go ahead and test our first one. I'm going to transit this to a Python SOP, and in my translate X, I'm going to take the exact expression that I used before and plug that in here. So it's nothing but the negative of the number of copies of my depth multiplied by the width of my asset. I'm going to click and try that, apply. Okay, it's cool, it worked, but there's a problem there, is that it's now pointed in the wrong direction. As you can see, it's pointed in the exact same direction, and we have to get it pointed in the opposite direction. So what that means is let's go ahead and turn it around 180 degrees. Oh, but that flipped it right over there. All right, so that means that we're going to have to move it almost the exact same amount over, but the number of width and not the amount of depth here. So let's go ahead and knock that in there. Hit Control E. Hit there. Okay, there it is. It's going to look almost like the exact same expression, but instead of depth, we're going to use width here. Click Apply, and our object is in place. Okay, awesome. Okay, things are looking groovy here. I'm going to click up and up again, and I'm just going to test this by moving the width and the depth around. So here's the depth. Everything seems to be working properly. Here's my depth. Okay, everything seems to be moving there. All right, cool. Let's right click, save to node type. All right, let's go into UE4 and test it out. We're into game engine. Go rebuild asset. Okay, it rebuilt the asset, and there is our modular building, and it's been created for us. So now if we go and add depth, whoa, there it is. It's huge. Okay, so we have the dynamic foundation working in the context of the engine using the engine assets. All right, we're doing good, folks, and it's only 4:10. We're doing great. So let's go ahead and implement height. So our height is, we're going to need to create multiple levels of this now. So I'm going to drop back into Houdini, go back into prop building master. Okay, so we have the width, depth, and now the height is actually, I hate to say this, going to be disgustingly simple. So all we have to do is drop in and then add a, okay, here's this merge. See, we have this merge node, and we have the merge of, we've got all of our points sitting in there. If, let me see if I can turn that off, turn this off to make it seem to be a bit more visible. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit more visible. So you can see the assets and see the points going around in there. You can see all the points there in that level. So what we want to do is do a copy and translate for this level, and we're going to do this for as many units high as we want. So we're just going to drop in a simple copy and transform. I'm going to drop that in here. I'm going to call this height. And for the total number, oh, change this to Python. I'm going to go ch, parentheses, quotes, and we want the ... slash height. And do we have a node called height? Oh, no, we don't have a node called height, but we do have the parameter called height. Okay, is that right? Yeah, it is, 1. Okay, so it's 1 unit high. And now, all we have to do is do very similar to what we did for our initial width. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this expression and then come back over here to height. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the height. Not for the width, I'm going to do it for the height. So I'm going to click that on there. Okay. If NCY is less than 2, the return 1. Okay, but instead of the width, we've been working with the width the whole time. But this time we want to work with the height of the asset because we want to go height on top. We want to stack them. So the component for our height is not 2, it's 1. So I'm going to change this to 1. So I'm going to click apply here. And then accept. And so what do we have here? Oh, yeah, we have high 1. So that looks like it's right. So let's go back to the proc building and give ourselves some height. Uh-oh, look at that. It looks like it's going in reverse direction. Okay, there are worse troubles to be had. So let's go and take a look at what's going on here. Okay, we're going in the wrong direction. As we add height, we say, okay, this is negative. Okay, so, here it is. I'm going to hit Alt-E to make this. Here it is. Since I copied it directly, I copied over the negative point, but we want to go positive. So we click positive and click apply. Then we're going positive direction now. So close. And now we make that. And now there is the hull of our building. All right. I'll click up here, and now click on Save Node Type. I'm going to go back to Engine, and then I'm going to click on my Rebuild asset. Hello? Oh, I'm going to go into this and give it some height. 4. Oh, there our building is. Okay. All right. That is super awesome, looking very cool. Now we can create a building within context of the game that is high, and we can make it very wide, or we can make it very narrow. It looks like Russian building. Very boring. Well, it's just boring because we're just using one asset here in order to replicate this. What we're going to do is repeat this for multiple assets. And how do you do that? Okay, well, one thing for sure is that this building here is missing a roof. Okay, so what we got to do is we got to, uh-oh, okay, 8, 2, do we have a problem? Okay, it has, look at that, it says number, okay, 3.4, but it's only, oh, it's 3 units high, 1, 2, 3, yeah, it's unit, my bad, blonde moment there. Okay, cool, let's go back to Houdini. Now, we said that we wanted to work with more than one piece. Now, we've only used one asset type, and that is we created an asset upper brick, our upper brick window asset. So let's go ahead and abstract this. Now, I want to abstract it once again to test my theory and to test my process to see if everything is working. So I'm going to create, so everything is displayed here, and then we have a group for our upper brick window here. And it's called that way? And their point group is called upper brick window. Okay, very good, exactly what we called it. So I'm going to turn off my object. Yes, let's make it go away. I'm going to right click and then drop in some more geometry. And then I am going to call this the exact same name of the primitive that I'm using, which is, in this case, upper underscore brick window AR 3.2, 3x2. Okay, so that's my asset. Now notice that I turned off the brick building master and I used the upper brick window. So I'm going to drop into here, and then I'm going to use an object merge. Now I'm going to reference in my proc building, my proc master building, // proc. Well, I have to go 2 levels. Okay, proc building master. So this brings in the whole building. Oh, come on. Okay, so that brings in the whole building. Pretty much we and do it into this object. All right, into this object. Very good. Now, here's the kicker. We don't want everything that's going to be in this object. What we want is only the upper brick window. So let's click in this and say, okay, we want that. Okay, so it's grabbing only those units that are in the group of upper brick window. All right, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead, click on here, and do an output SOP. And then I'm going to call this once again upper brick window AR.3.2. Okay, so that is the definitive output node for that particular unit. And everything's working copacetically. I'm going to right click, say save node type. Now let's just make sure that it corresponds to Houdini. Inside of Engine. Now notice here for the instance, it says proc building master, proc building out. Okay, well that's fine. So let's go ahead and rebuild the asset. Now we changed the whole network around. And it kind of changed things around, so it's confused. So what we're going to have to do is retell it what it wants. So we used upper brick window here. So let's go ahead and then put the upper brick window back into the slot. It seems like every time that we change the configuration, we're going to have to put in the assets again. All right, so everything is looking fine and beautiful. But now instead of this, it tells us which asset that we need to put inside the slot there. It's now called upper brick window AR, and that's the one we're going to use. That's what it's looking for. Very cool. So what we're going to do now is go back to Houdini and look at this. This doesn't have a roof. let's toss a roof on it. So drive into Proc Building. And so we've got that. So I'm going to duplicate this entire asset geometry up here. And then I'm going to call that. Now, the other object that, if you remember, way back at the beginning of this session, we duplicated a lesson called, I think it was plain ground 3x3. So it's asset plain ground underscore 3x3. All right, I'm going to drop into here. So for this file, I'm going to go and choose, and I'm going to go to navigate to its spot. Go up, and this is walls grounds, and this is plain ground 3x3. That's what we want. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to have to, now it's looking funky, but don't worry folks here. What we're gonna have to do is turn this off. Yes. And it goes flat, and then I'm going to refreeze it. Okay. Okay, so now we have our object. Okay. And oh, we're gonna get rid of the, I forgot. I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm feeling lazy, so if we do any more of these, I'm gonna call UCX underscore, this was ground underscore, I'm gonna call it plain ground underscore 3x3. All right, so, oh, yeah, that's right. Inside this blast, I'm just going to call it UCX underscore $OS. Okay, did that nuke it? No. Oh, I'm just going to put the whole name in there. There it goes. All right, very good. All right, very good. So we've got our new asset in there. Okay, so let's drop into Proc Build. I'm going to turn this off and then turn on Proc Building Master for the moment. All right, so we have our one object here. And I'm going to go ahead and group that asset type, upper underscore brick underscore window underscore 3x2. Okay. Now what we're going to do is almost the entire process, but we're going to do this for the roof. But the roof is going to be much easier because we don't have 3 dimensions to deal with. We only have 2 dimensions to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this guy. I'm into duplications these days. And so I'm going to call this plain underscore ground underscore 3x3. And so for the input here, and I'm going to just say asset $OS. Does this work right? I don't know if it works right, so I'm just going to go plain ground 3x3. Except, okay, I know that that worked now. And so I'm going to go in and grab this add, grab my point wrangle. I'm going to duplicate these and move these on over here. And so I'm going to add the initial position for our object here. So I'm going to drop in a transform. And I'm going to call this first position because this is the first position for the ceiling. First position. Okay, so what we're going to do is, okay, let's take a look at this. Let's see if we can integrate this whole deal. So we've got that going into a group, and we have that going out. So let's go ahead and do a point to copy into here. let's test this out. I'm always testing it out. So let's just say, copy to point. Copy to points. Testing. So this should copy to that point. Okay, pack and transform. And now we've got that. So let's go ahead and add a group to it. And we're going to do, I can tell my session is starting to get tired. I've been computing a long time. All right, so my group name is going to be plane underscore ground underscore 3 by 3. And make sure everything is inside of that. Okay, and now let's go ahead and toss in a merge that merges my groups together. So I'm going to toss in a merge. Okay, we got to snag that. And let's snag this. And if we display, okay, it's displayed, but you'll see that we've got a different orientation for this tile. So let's put this tile in its first initial position. And that's what this particular transform node is going to do, is transform this first position. And so what we're going to need to do is, you'll see that this node here starts here, and this plane is about half of the distance between the width of our first window asset. So what we're going to need is that width of that asset multiplied by 0.5. And so here I've got this expression again. So for the TX, I'm going to make sure that this is Python. So for my translation, I'm going to go ahead and insert that in there. And so this moved it so that it moves into the corner for the X direction. And now we're going to have to do the exact same expression and paste this for the Z direction. Okay, there it is. I'm going to lower this wall just a bit so it's a little bit more visible. Okay, and now the wall, it doesn't quite look like a wall. It's like an inset, just a little bit too much. So I'm going to move this position up 1. So it's all there. All right, cool. So now all we have to do is now combine all these and duplicate it, once for the width and then again for the depth. And that should be easy, right? Because all we have to do is lay down the copy to points, but that's already been done for us. So if we want, what we're going to do is grab my width node and Alt-click this and move that over here and then sneak that right into there. And then we have our width. Okay, so I'm going to call this width. I'm going to call this roof width. All right, not so shabby. That was pretty easy. So will it work again if we just do the depth? So let's grab our depth node, hit Control-C, drag this across, sneak that in there. And there it is. We didn't even have to do anything on that. I like it when we don't have to do anything. That makes things so much easier. So I'm going to call it roof depth. Now that makes things kind of simple. Now we have to do is we've got width, we got depth. Now all I have to do is height. So let me add some height here. So let's go and add a building, and like as expected, we don't have anything in there. So let's go ahead and add our height. So I'm thinking like, okay, what can we do? Well, we don't need a copy to transform. All we need is a transform node in here. So I'm going to add a transform. And I'm going to call this roof height. And then change this to Python. And now all we have to do is move this, how many units high we have here. This should be 1, 2, 3. This should be like the unit's 3 high. And so that should be 3 times the height, or however the height is, times the height of our brick wall. And so where's that information kept before? I believe that's kept in here. Okay, so let's expand this expression. So here is our expression. So I'm going to grab this expression right here. There's our height. And I'm going to drop that into the roof height. And now all we have to do is copy this by the number of actual copies that we have in the height node. So it's CH, open and close parentheses, open and close quotes, and inside the quotes, put in // height / NCY, because that is the number of height. So if we hit apply, oops, something didn't write there. Upper brick node, height NCY, okay, it says invalid syntax. Okay, oh, I forgot to put the times sign. Times, oops, click apply. Oh, okay, look at that. Okay, it did it one too many times. That's not a problem. All right, so all we can do is just subtract 1 from whatever that number is. So in order to do that, I'm just going to put parentheses around my number of copies. And then inside the parentheses, I'm going to put -1. Oops, got to stop doing that. Hit apply. Much better. Okay, our roof is now sitting on top of our building. Sweet. Okay, very good. This is looking really great. Another call from California. Regretfully, I left California about 12 years ago. I haven't been back since, regretfully. But I still get calls from Chinese solicitors all day long. Go figure. All right, so let's go back and aha. So here we are in a proc building. So I'm going to turn this off. And so we've got our upper brick building. So let's create another similar instance group for our roof. So we're going to click in here, and I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to call this group plane underscore ground underscore 3 by 3. All right, and inside of there, I'm just going to go ahead and merge. And there's, I don't want this group anymore. I want my plane group. So here's my plane group, and there it is. Okay, so now what we're displaying is 2 different groups. One is my upper brick window group, and the other is my plane group. Okay, let's go ahead and go up, save this digital asset, and return to engine, and take a look at what we got. All right, I'm going to hit rebuild asset. Now, since I'm adding a new asset, this is probably going to make us re-enter in our assets, but that's probably okay. So hit rebuild asset. And there's our roof. Okay, it didn't make us re-edit, so this is nice. I never know what to... Okay, so all we have to do now, because this is the Houdini asset, now we have to replace it by the engine asset. And I'm going to expand this, and it says upper brick window, so this is the asset we need to replace. And I'm going to replace that in plane ground 3 by 3. And there it is. All right. Voila, very good. And now we have our dynamic building that expands however we want to. In Houdini, we can change its height. We can change any variation. Now, what I showed you today is a very simplistic version, and I was going very slow in order to demonstrate all of the concepts and make sure that they're understood. Now, as a procedural modeler, you could do this all day long with unlimited number of variations of assets. You could have an unlimited number of assets. And so here it is. I didn't use I didn't model anything. All I did was use the assets coming out of the asset pack. And with that, I was able to create a process of where I could create a digital asset inside of the context of the engine of where I could go and change its shape dynamically. Now this is as wide open as infinite is your imagination. And all you have to do is for every unique piece in there, you're going to just have to create a unique export object that exports this as one object. And so that is how you do it, gang. Now, as I mentioned, this is just one particular workflow. There are other workflows, but I wanted to create a workflow where I didn't have to do any modeling whatsoever, and I didn't have to do any texture work, and I didn't have to do any modifications. All I did was use the assets from the asset pack and then turn it back into the engine, and now I'm creating dynamic assets within the context of the engine. Okay, fun, 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 fun. All right, now regretfully, this version of Houdini Secrets might be the last version of Houdini Secrets going into quote unquote advanced or intermediate material. And the reason for that is that I am a teacher at the University of Central Florida, and I am going to be teaching my Introduction to Houdini class, and which regretfully overlaps the exact same time as this class. And so therefore I will, and since we're going to be broadcasting, part of the reason why I was able to get this to go and say, okay, I would teach the students that, but the students need to be taught basic Houdini. So therefore, the format for Houdini Secrets is going to be not so much Houdini Secrets, but more like Houdini Essentials and Fundamentals. All right, now this class that we went over today might be closer to that Essentials and but since it's using a little bit of Python and using a little bit of trickery and digital assets, it's kind of a few months away. So I wanted to get this in before having to revert back to the more primitive version. So we'll wait and see to happen. Check in with my YouTube channel and see the description for whatever's going to be displayed on Houdini Secrets. You'll see ahead of time. I will make a mention if this is going to be a foundational class or an intermediate or advanced class. I'll announce that from here on in. And I hope that you enjoyed it. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We always like to have more folks jumping in here, and I'd love to see if you're able to create more dynamic content on. I'd love to see what you could do with your asset packs. If you want to check me out on Facebook, it's Chris Rhoda, and there is the Orlando Houdini Users Group, which by chance just happens to have a meeting tonight at 7 o'clock. So check it out. Come on in and join our Houdini Users Group. This is the Orlando Houdini Users Group, the OHUG, and these are exciting times. The release for 18.5 is about to happen around the corner, so very, very exciting business. Houdini 18, can you believe it already, man? I remember when Houdini 1 was released. Jeez Louise, am I old? But anyway, check it out there. And if you want to check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, check me out, Chris Rhoda or TechArt EDU. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you can join us for Houdini Secrets next week. Have a great weekend.